This is the Go Maluku podcast.
What's good, everyone? Ghazali Ohorella here with a new episode of the Go Maluku podcast, and we're at the expert workshop over here in Geneva, so not in Sharm-el-Sheikh anymore. We have too many people, too little mics, so I'll hand it over to Tomo to take it away.
Okay.
That's you.
Okay, yes. Thanks, Ghazali. Welcome to Go Maluku podcast. I wasn't actually sure that this was going to be a Go Maluku podcast, but it is now. Yes, we are in Geneva for expert workshop on enhanced participation of Indigenous Peoples representative institutions. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful. And we have here very distinguished guests from all over the world, Indigenous peoples representing their nations, and so on. And we have Ini from Guna, Yala, and Frank. I've known you for many times, but I've known you for quite a long time. But you represent.
I'm representing the National Congress of American Indians, amongst others. So.
And how many nations is that?
Well, it varies a little from year to year, but it's around 200 of tribal governments in North America,
right.
In the United States.
Yeah. And we have Tiana here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, kia ora. Tuatahi ake he rea hau no Ngāti Kahungunu ki te wairo, no te whakatōhia no ngai tūhoi, i te taho tōka pāpa no koroatia. Ko te ana tōku inga.
Great. Well, first of all, I know, Tiana, this is your first time in Geneva. What's your first impression?
I came straight to the venue and I got lost because you drive on the wrong side of the road here, so that was fun. But otherwise, good. Yeah, I'm excited to get stuck in. So yeah.
And are you nervous a little bit? Are you coming into?
I don't think I'm nervous. I'm excited for the potential of what this will create for Indigenous peoples more than I am nervous. I think because we're surrounded by so many people that have been involved in this process for so long that I think a good process is inevitable, so long as people stick to the task at hand.
And Frank, if I can get to you, I mean, this is a major step for Indigenous peoples to be making in the grounds of UN. In the grand scheme of the movement that you've experienced throughout your life, what does today mean to you?
Well, as I'm a former elected leader, I tell people I'm a recovering politician or a recovering tribal chairman. And I was there for 14 years, and that was 14 years ago. And I've always had that thought that no matter what I personally think or whatever discomfort or whatever challenges are before me, I'm always aware that it's not me that I'm working for, but I'm working for all those coming generations. And I'm working to fulfill the aspirations of all those generations that came before. All those ones who have fought so hard to protect our people and to lead our people through challenging times. And now the times are no less challenging than they were then in a much more broader scale when we talk about all the issues of climate change and all the different issues that we have with foods and with our natural resources and everything, how that all comes together, and it sort of comes to a head in places like this meeting today, where we're working on with the Human Rights Council and ways to make sure that our peoples that we're able to engage here when they're talking about us. We don't want them to be without us. We want them to have. To be able for us to be able to make comments and participate, so that I guess the way I feel on this is looking at the weight of all those coming generations, and so it's worth any of the different discomforts I may feel, like walking up the long hill, coming here and being out of breath. It's worth it, to be here to do this work.
Thanks, Frank. Ini, when you learned about this process, enhanced participation of Indigenous peoples represented institutions, how would you explain to people back home what this process means to them?
Well, first of all, I would like to say something. It's about here in Geneva. I actually did my internship here 10 years ago, but I never came to this side of Geneva. So it's my first time here in United Nations office. But more unexcited for me is because now I'm on name of my people, my territory, Kunayala people. Normally, a lot of people they come in name of NGOs. It's good, but this time is on name of my territories and my to Congress. So talking now about the enhanced participation, I could say that when I at the beginning explained it to them how that would be and why it's important for our territories also to participate, and they were like, they had to go. I had to go to process from to Congress, and this is one of an example why we should also see how I got here, and it took me weeks to get the both Congress letters saying yes, can or he's gonna be, so my expectation is I cannot say that I have expectation because it's something new for my territory itself. It's something totally open, and I could say that we're gonna see afterwards about how we do and how it's happening here, and how we can go a little bit further more on this. But the main concern is to bring back all this information to our elders, and they can understand why all we are here and why it's important also the supporting from the roots, from the community for these activities.
Yeah, thanks, Ini. Anyone have any impressions of what transpired today, especially this morning when the introductions of different agenda items were introduced and the states and the indigenous people started making statements? Any impressions that you might have got from the floor?
Well, the first impression I have is anyone who's in a hurry or impatient, don't come to the UN. It takes a long time to say hello here.
Right.
And it took us a big part of the morning for that. But it was good because we heard some things we hadn't heard before from some of the nations. And and you listen for just one or two little words every now and then that you've never heard in a statement they've made before. You listen for that, and so they're worth it. But it's I have several pages of notes from the morning, and I wrote them down just to sort of keep myself in order of what was going on. But I'm probably never going to look at them again, from this morning. Now we'll see what happens as we move through the days coming up.
But just if you could care to explain what those couple of words that you've never heard coming from the States before.
Well, the word support with indigenous people following it. Those are nice to hear. Yeah. And support participation. That's another one of those words that we don't always hear that. We hear a lot of general statements, but the expressions of support were stronger and more genuine than I've heard before. I see you're agreeing on that.
Yeah, it surprised me this afternoon. I only came in this afternoon, but it surprised me how many states were saying it's up for Indigenous peoples to determine which meetings they want to participate in, rather than being told we must go to this table, or we're at a table on a consultative and tokenistic basis. And they were like, no, it's up for you to determine where you want to participate and how you want to participate, which was a positive sign to see.
Any first impression?
Actually, I'm glad to hear about the statements also during the morning and during the afternoon. And what I would say that, well, it's kind of most of them positive because there are the countries that may support more indigenous people. So, but I was thinking during the meetings, I think also we need to to invite other countries that maybe we need, like they could join to understand why we are doing it. Because sometimes if you don't go, or if you don't come to this kind of meetings, you don't understand properly why we are doing this. That's just, but in general, I'm happy how it started. Of course, there is a few things that maybe we can improve more.
So there was a lot of discussions in that particular conversation about the way where we had perceived states and how they posture themselves at the very opening, and it is certainly welcoming and to hear and sets the tone for the next 3 days. But what about the Indigenous Peoples side? What do you hear from them today? Anyone?
I'll let you lead it.
I think the most memorable thing that I heard was the classic catchphrase, "Nothing about us without us," was then flipped and said, "Just nothing without us," instead of "about us," which kind of characterizes why we're here, so that any mechanisms under the Human Rights Council does have Indigenous peoples input, where people can self-determine who and how they want to participate within that arena.
And we heard a lot of comments that were from that were all over the board, actually, in terms of the general kinds of comments, but we heard some very energetic, youthful comments, which were really important to have. And then you heard some from some of us seasoned people with hardly any hair, okay? Where we once were those people that were making those comments, and now we're making more seasoned comments. And it takes both. You have to blend all of that together in order to get a good outcome. And so we're hearing from people who are, some folks are right on the ground, right in the middle of things, and they're here to tell us about that. And those are important. What are the ramifications of not being here? What are the ramifications of not being able to go to the Human Rights Council, except for 2 minutes at the end of a session? What are those things, and how do you actually express in something that short a time what it is that you need to express here? And so I think we're hearing a lot of that frustration, but at the same time we're also hearing that optimism about that we may be able to change that. We may be able to make additional progress.
How do you become seasoned?
You get old. you just go to lots of meetings, and eventually you either go nuts and don't come anymore,
right,
or else you get sane and don't come anymore. One or the other. But then you also just have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And you develop a sort of an institutional memory about how things have been done, what people have said, and what it's led to before, which then gives you that idea that maybe every now and then you hear that word that you've never heard before, that maybe things are moving, maybe things are changing a bit. And I really felt optimistic about where we're at this morning. Hearing from the panel, the opening statements, the president of the Human Rights Council, and all the other folks that were up at the head table, we got a lot of really positive statements, and so that made me feel good. So
yeah, I had to hold you for a bit because I want to just follow up on Frank. Just following up on what you said about sometimes you see progress, and today we've seen some from the States, and just wondered where does the change come from? Where do you think it come from today?
Persistence. Saying what we need to say and saying it over and over and over again, finding different ways to say it, and finding, and circumstances change. You have different things that happen in the world, both in the natural environment and in the social and cultural environment of the world. And at different points in history, a comment that may not be able to be heard by people once, 5 years later, you can say the same thing and people will hear it. And so you have to be persistent because you never know when that moment's going to come when what you're saying is going to connect with people.
Very good. So, sorry, your turn.
Yeah.
What did you hear from Indigenous peoples today?
No, actually, I was just like amazed just listening. Who doesn't? Well, I would keep what the representative from Rwanda he said. Also nowadays, that the indigenous people there, they have not been recognized as indigenous people. So if they are not recognized, how they can have rights? So I think this is one of the things that is going on nowadays, 2022. A lot of things has been like done related to indigenous people's right, but still we have every day we are learning and the new the things happening in different countries, and that Kenneth was saying, that even like this, we are here, and that's one of the things that I think is adds space also to show to the world what's going on and how we are like working also to support that kind of countries, territories.
But you're here for the first time in this building, but you're also here as an expert, which is a huge step up for you. How do you feel?
How do I feel? Yes, still were the expert, but sure, I am an expert from my territories, and the only thing that is to bring that like information from my territories, proper words, and the technical words also here. So this is a huge opportunity, not for just my territories, for all Abya Yala that I am representing, and also you have someone who is coming from the territory, and being closer to my elders, my chief. So being here, it's kind of like I never expected, but somehow I would say that never forgetting the people who were here before, who have done a lot of things before. Something and also brings me the memory of my cousin Stevansin. So I have him here, and I wish I could be as good as him, when he's talking and expressing himself. So a lot of things, a lot of feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure he will not be disappointed. I'm sure he'll be proud that you're here. Moving on, next 3 days, what are your expectations? I mean, anything about modalities or selection mechanism, criteria, or anything? How do you think? What would you like to see in the next 3 days in terms of leading up to this report that is going to be drafted on Thursday?
Well, so this is our first day, but I think the few days that is coming, and first of all, I need to off the nervous that I am to get involved, to say what I would like to say, and that's the first thing. On the other hand, to participate more, and also to see the examples that we got in different territories, and how can be involved here that we are talking about the participation, how it should be. So I could say that my expectation for those days is high. I need to get I will be learning a little bit more and get more information to get focusing on what we would like to get in the end, and wishing also that all the indigenous people, the brothers, sisters that are here, we could come together with the same mentality or same objective. That is to get participation of indigenous peoples in the right way.
Yep. Yeah. Next 3 days, what would you like to see in the report, for example?
Not sure. I think my expectations for the next 3 days is just also building on how we can unite consensus as Indigenous peoples and how one person's understanding can help uplift and empower other people's understandings to participate within these forums, within all kinds of UN mechanisms. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to seeing. In terms of the report, I guess I'm hoping that the needle is moved more than just a little bit, incrementally, and that next year will be a positive year for this work stream.
Last word, right?
Well, I'm looking. I've always been cautiously optimistic as an elected leader and as a participant in all of these. Cautiously optimistic, but I'm also a realist in terms of how long it takes some institutions to move. And I realize that in the grand scheme of things, the UN has moved quite a long ways when it comes to Indigenous people, Indigenous rights, and access to the UN and all these different things. Now what we have to do is improve. We have to improve that access. We have to improve, I thought of the one comment about the Special Rapporteur on Indigenous rights, how there needs to be at least 7 of them or more because of the different regions, and how, the idea that you've got, that we have the concept, but in order to actually make it work, it may need to be thought through a little more. In other words, it needs to be a broader scope, because it is literally too much to put on one person to expect that. Well, the same thing that we have here, we have the Human Rights Council. We've done quite well here in terms of working on resolutions. I've been party of some of the drafting of some of those resolutions that have come out each year on Indigenous rights. I've had some input into those over the years, and we have had some success, and we've had some times when we weren't as successful as we'd like. What I look at this is, the report that comes out of here, it's advisory. What comes out of here is an advisory report. What will happen with that, we don't know. It depends on many things that are out of our control. But what we have in our control is what we say in the next few days. What we're able to make sure is in that report, that we can, from our point of view, and to the extent that we can have nations supporting what we say that's in that report, it will be even better. And what do they say? You don't get something unless you ask for it. So the point is, we have to make our ask big. We have to ask for what we really would like to see in the end, even knowing that we're going to get part of it, probably not all of it, but the idea that we will be making progress, and that there's a sort of a long-term view that you have to have. As you get older, when you're young, you're impatient. And then you get sort of middle age, and you can see the value of committees, and you start thinking about how things take longer to do. As you get older, you start getting impatient again, because you realize that time's of the essence here, and you better get something done quick. You might have a decade left, you better get something done. And so, as you get older, you tend to get a little more impatient. So what I look at out of this report is something that, as you said, will move the needle. I'd like to move it more than a little, but we'll see. But I think that's what we can hope for is progress. The fact that this meeting is happening is progress. So we've already moved the needle.
Oh.
I guess we're all done.
Well, yeah, it's like you say.
It's progress. We have power again.
But like you say, the circumstances are changing, and the states are throwing support, and those languages are very welcoming. So now it's also, I guess, a time to ask for bigger things, and hopefully that will be reflected in the final outcome of this event. So let's call it a day. I think Ghazali needs to go somewhere else, and I'm sure we'll have another one of these things tomorrow. So thanks Ini, Frank, and Tiana for being here, and we'll definitely continue this conversation tomorrow. So
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay.
My friends, you can now also listen to the Go Maluku podcast on Spotify. Listen while you use other apps or do other things. If you don't have Spotify, just open your Apple or Google podcast or your favorite podcasting app and search for the Go Maluku podcast.